there, my name is Benedetta and welcome to Tender is the Read. So in today's video, I want to show you some of the different editions of classic books that I collect and like to read from, so that you can have a little look inside before you decide which one to buy, and you can compare and contrast them so that you know which one will fit your needs better. Now, when it comes to classic books, of course, because of the fact that they're in the public domain, that means that there are so many editions to choose from. Some of them are more extensive than others, some of them present extra features that others don't have, and so it's somewhat important to know which one to choose if you're somebody who is a bit particular about what type of physical books they like to read. So in order to make this video as informative as possible, I've only selected 5 editions to start with, and if you want to see more, feel free to suggest them in the comments below, and I'll possibly make a second video to follow this, and I will be showing you all the features that these books have, and I will be essentially ranking the pros and cons in a way, or just simply the features that they do have and they do not have, so that you have a clear comparison and an expectation of what you will get if you do buy them. Before we start, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like this video if you enjoy it. And now let's jump right in. The first edition that I want to show you today is the Oxford World Classics. I have quite a few of them, and this edition is recognizable by the white spine. So the first criteria by which I will be analyzing all of these editions is the catalogue, and the Oxford World Classics have a very vast amount of titles that you can find in this edition, which is great if you're looking for books spanning from ancient history, ancient literature, to the more modern, I think up to the 20th century. So you will find many sort of underrated or lesser known classics, which is obviously excellent. Each book comes with an introduction by a scholar, so you can see here as you open the first page, you will find a biography of the author and then a biography of the scholar who has curated this edition. After the introduction, which is usually quite lengthy, you will see a couple of pages dedicated to the chronology of the author, which essentially lists all of the events in their lives, as well as some wider historical events that might have affected their lives and works, and then you go on with the content itself. I would say the biggest drawback of this edition is that the font used, while pretty clear and legible, it is also quite small, and in general the pages are not always super thick. It depends on, you know, how new the edition is and how long the book is. You will notice, for example, that comparing books that are quite thick in general to other editions, this one really condenses the pages a lot and makes the books much thinner than other editions, which I don't know how much it matters. I suppose that it makes this edition more easy to carry around, but in my opinion the font could be a little bit bigger for ease of reading. It's quite dense as well. Finally, when it comes to the aesthetic note, I do love the white spine. It is just very simple and clean. The writing is black and then red for the title, and then up here it just has a little red band and then a snippet of the image that is on the cover, which is usually just like a painting or drawing, which often, but not always, I find very fitting and also quite pretty. I will say there are some duds sometimes where I don't understand why certain choices have been made, because the image is, like, for example, more modern than the book that it represents, so I'm not too sure about that. But I would say the spine is what matters the most in this case for me, because of how I display this collection on my shelves, and I think that the white fits my house aesthetic the best, so that's why I keep collecting this edition, as well as the fact that it's very extensive. So to sum up, I love the vast catalogue. The fact that it's got an introduction could be good for you, and I really appreciate the aesthetic, but the font is quite small. The second edition I have here is possibly one of the most well-known, if not the most well-known classics edition, which is the Penguin Black Spine edition. This edition has been around forever, and I've got some of the vintage ones as well, but of course those are out of print, and it is one of the by far largest catalogues. In fact, I think it is the largest as far as I'm aware. There are a lot of classic books that you will only find in this edition, and on top of that they also make collections. So you will have the Penguin book of witchcraft, you will have the Penguin book of death and whatnot, and those are quite interesting. I have here one that I recently acquired when I was up in Scotland, which is the Scottish Folk and Fairy Tales from Burns to Buchan, which is not so much a classic per se, but it's a collection of classic stories. This is a quite unique feature of the Penguin Classics, and on top of these collections you can also find, once again, books spanning from antiquity to the 20th century, not included because Penguin have a separate modern classics edition. This edition also comes with an introduction and notes from scholars, so once again one that is commonly recommended in universities and you will find quite accessible. Something I didn't say before about the Oxford World Classics as well as this one, they cost right about £10, so they are, you know, again, rather accessible. The font here is a little bit larger in my opinion, and the pages seem to be a little bit thicker. I will say I don't truly collect a lot of this edition, so I've not read a lot of these books, but just from looking at it just now, I find it a little bit more clear. Not big by any means, you won't find probably any classics edition that has really large font, but nevertheless I find this slightly easier to read. So look-wise, the spine is black, it doesn't have anything on it, so it's super clean, just the black, and then the front usually has a painting, a drawing that has something to do with the book somehow. Very classic and simple. The thing is, for me, I don't love the black. Everything else is so light and I feel like there's a bit of a black hole that sucks all the energy out of the room. So I don't love to collect this edition. I get it when it's the only edition that will make a book, and I have several of them. You can see them right there in my bookshelf, like the Fairy Queen, the Magna Carta, the Heptameron. These are really old texts, and therefore many editions won't bother publishing them, and I'm so grateful that you can find them in the Penguin. So just to sum up, the pros is that you can find books that are really unique, and the drawback is I don't love the aesthetic per se. The next edition that I want to show you is the Barnes & Noble Paperback Classics. This is one of my favorite editions to collect. I've got quite a few over there, you can see them forming a little rainbow, and it is also one of my favorite to read. To begin with, I would say the catalogue of the Barnes & Noble edition is not quite as extensive as the previous two. I would say it's mid-range. It has a good variety, but it's not complete. It may not even have all the books from one author that you may be interested in. It might just publish the highlights. So you'll be able to essentially access the most popular classics as well as some lesser known ones. In terms of introduction and notes, I feel like this edition is probably the most detailed. In the very first page, it starts with some quotes from the book, then it has a biography of the author, an introduction, and at the end, very interestingly in my opinion, it will provide you with an inspired by section and also comments and questions, which could be, I suppose, quite useful if you're somebody who's studying the book that you're reading and you're preparing for an assignment or an exam. And in general, the comments I find very interesting because it's little notes and reviews from other classic authors. I don't know, it's very interesting that that's provided all in this edition. Now, another massive point in favor of this edition is the font and writing. So the font, I would say, is same size as the Penguin one, so I wouldn't call it big, but it's definitely readable. But what makes it even better is the fact that it's really spaced out. The lines have more space than the other two books that I've showed you, which means that the reading experience, in my opinion, is so easy on the eye. It's just a really nice clear page, and the pages are so thick, just a nice soothing color. So I just really enjoy reading this edition for that reason. It's just relaxing, as reading should be, honestly. Finally, design wise, every book in this collection is given a different shade, a different color. The colors all like sort of muted, so never very much in your face. I just like the fact that they go very nice against each other, and on the front still it has a little image that reflects somewhat the content of the book. To sum up, I basically love everything about this edition. I obviously would like for it to be more extensive, and I hope that they continue to bring up new titles. When it comes to the con, something I didn't talk about earlier is the fact that this edition is not available everywhere. It's a US edition. In the UK, I access it through eBay or World of Books, so secondhand online bookstores, and actually that has proven to be an advantage for me in the sense that, of course, it makes it really cheap to get these. I've never spent more than £5 on one of these books, and usually I spend more like towards £2. The original retail price says here that it is $8.95, which again puts it on the same bracket as those previous ones, just a pretty cheap paperback. But again, availability varies, of course, due to the fact that I can source these only secondhand. I can't always find the titles that do exist in this edition because they may not be available on eBay. It's something to consider, and I understand if you don't like reading secondhand books, this may not be an option for you if you don't live in the United States. Now I have another one of my favorite editions to collect, and I'm talking about the Canterbury Classics Word Cloud Classics. As you can see on my bookshelf that has been practically entirely dedicated to it, this edition is just amazing to me. I mostly love the aesthetic, it's what's drawn me in, but it's actually one of the editions that I prefer to read from. So the Word Cloud Classics is an ever-expanding edition. I would call it mid-range at this point. At the moment, it doesn't have all the titles you might desire. However, every couple of months it comes out with at least 1 or 2 new books, and a lot of them are books that have just recently come into the public domain, which means that it's going to be one of the first editions to add them to their catalog. That is something that I find really exciting because it gives me the possibility to read books that I had perhaps put off due to the fact that I couldn't get them in a nice edition that I liked reading and collecting. When you look inside the book, you can see that it doesn't really have an introduction. It doesn't have notes, it doesn't have any of that. In fact, if you look at the back as well, it doesn't really have a blurb either. It just has a quote from the book, which is something that I personally appreciate because I don't really ever read introductions because I feel like they sort of spoil the book to me. I don't even read the blurb. I usually know vaguely something about the book, but I mostly like to go into it blind, and I find that the blurb oftentimes will spoil things for me. I feel like that happens more with classics than it happens with contemporary books. They give so many details because almost they give for granted the fact that these books have been around for centuries, and so people already know the plot, and I don't like that. I prefer going in blind. I don't bother with introductions, so for me this is actually perfect. So as I was saying, I really enjoy reading from this edition because of the fact that the font, once again, quite big. I would say sometimes is bigger than average, and again it's spaced very nicely. I don't know if this is because it's more of an American preference and more UK based editions are just more dense. On top of it, it is printed in very luxurious feeling paper, really thick, really smooth. So I don't know, to me it's a sensory experience as well. It's something that elevates the reading. I also appreciate the fact that this is not paperback, it is a flexi bound edition. Just like a hardback, the way that this edition is bound means that the spine won't break. The pages are attached to an inner spine. The spine that you see here is rounded and nice, just like a hardback. The pages themselves though are quite soft, quite bendable, and it is quite light compared to a normal hardback. Moreover, once again, I just like the sensory experience of the flexi-bound like rubber material. That's obviously up to taste, but I just feel like that's something that's quite unique for classics editions to have. Aesthetic wise, I just absolutely adore this. The design here is quite simple. It doesn't have an image on the front. Each book is given a different shade, a different color. It's also common in the newer releases that they will have little symbols on the front. For example, here we have little seagulls and a shell on the back, and then you see the word cloud, which represents essentially the characters, locations and quotes from the book itself. And then finally the spine as well is assigned a little symbol which is embossed, and then it's also replicated here on each page. Fits so perfectly, and again I just appreciate how beautiful this edition is. So to conclude, this edition I love because it's easy to read and it's beautiful to look at. On the other hand, it has no introduction. And price-wise, I think that this also comes to about £10. It is on par with a paperback, but it's definitely more luxurious feeling. And finally, I have another fancy edition. I'm talking about the famous and viral Penguin Clothbound Classics. This is another ever-expanding collection. The catalog grows every year, I believe. I don't know if this is mid-range yet, but I think it's getting there if it's not already. I don't have a lot of these books. I have just 4 and they're all like ancient literature, but I can tell you that they do come with introductions, so that's really nice. Compared to the Penguin Black Spine, there is a definite improvement in the quality of the paper and the quality also of the writing. It is quite dense when it comes to the spaces between lines, but the font is big enough and it is quite readable. Now, the design is obviously the strong point, what makes it a collector's item. This is a hardback book, which is covered in cloth. And the cloth itself presents a repetitive motif across the front, the back, which is also bare, doesn't have anything on it, and the spine. There's 2 issues, I would say. The first one is that this sort of like rubbery print is very sensible to wear and tear. For example, in this very book, The Odyssey, I don't know if I did it or if I bought it like this from the bookstore, but essentially the title and the author on the spine is rubbed off a little bit. That can happen by just literally reading it, just rubbing it as you hold it, or it can happen putting it in and out back into a bookshelf next to other books. So of course I find this quite impractical, and it's not ideal considering the fact that this edition is quite a bit pricier than the other ones. They start at £15 and then go up depending on how big the book is. Another issue that I find is that the design itself, while the idea is obviously amazing, I feel like sometimes the motif chosen is not to my taste. So it can be quite hit or miss. When you have a very extensive collection of this edition, it just looks majestic on a bookshelf. It is very luxurious feeling, and it has a ribbon as well in the middle, so a built-in bookmark for you. So yeah, on the plus side, it's obviously a great collector item if you like the design and it's got an introduction. It's nice to read, luxurious, but on the other hand, it is a little bit pricey and it is subject to wear and tear. So that is all for the 5 editions that I selected today. Let me know in the comments below if you collect any of these or if you collect any different classics edition. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving it a like and subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you very soon. Bye!